For a majority of GTA 5's story, our main trio of Michael, Trevor, and Franklin, and to an extent lesser, are sort of slaves or errand boys for the FIB, more specifically, the neurotic, crazy, tweaked out Steve Haines. And as we all know, they end up killing him because he targeted Trevor. But did you ever ask yourselves, why was our trio doing Steve's dirty work in the first place? Well, I believe that for each of the three main characters, the reason is different. Let's start with Franklin. Now, Franklin's reason is the most simple and straightforward one out of the three. It's because he felt that he owed Michael in a way for helping him to get deeper into the criminal underworld, and just genuinely because at this point Franklin already saw Michael as his friend, so essentially Franklin's reason was just to repay Michael and or help a friend in need. Now later on, he also pretty much has no choice because he was already in the shitter and he was forced to work for them, otherwise they would just have him arrested, just like Steve almost had Michael arrested in the wrap-up mission towards the end of the game. Trevor, however, to me his reason was a bit confusing the first time I played the game, but that's entirely on me because I wasn't paying attention to the story the first time I played the game. But Trevor, after he met up with Michael during the first job that they had for Steve Haines in the Mission 3's company, Trevor wasn't really up to the whole thing and he was making fun of Michael a bit in his usual fashion. But I think after this mission he figured out a plan of how he could try to use the feds. So his plan, as far as I get it, was essentially to do some work for them and then have them get Brad out of prison. And since Trevor, despite him being a complete psycho, was loyal to his friends, so I can't imagine that maybe he did all those stunts for the FIB out of loyalty to Michael simply. Even in this mission by the book, where Trevor clearly recognizes Dave, he still stayed and did the job, as well as a few future jobs for the FIB, again for his own plan, but likely to out of loyalty for his friends. However, he wasn't afraid to let them know what he thought about them, and he clearly hated Steve Haines the most. And just like Michael, Trevor didn't really have much of a choice in the matter now that you think about it, since you gotta remember one thing: after the job in North Yankton, Trevor went on the run and was a wanted criminal. So if he refused, Steve could have easily had him simply arrested. Also, real quick before I continue, I would really like to ask you guys to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you guys are enjoying the content, and like the video while you're at it, as it helps out a lot. Also, make sure to, when you're subscribing, have it leave a hole in the subscribe button, a bigger one than the one Steve has in his head after that sniper rifle shot in the final mission. Okay, back to the video. Now, someone might wonder, well, what if the trio testified against Steve Haines? Firstly, they don't have any proof. Secondly, nobody would believe them, because look at it this way: these guys are three criminals against mostly Steve, who still on his own even is a high-ranking FIB agent. And even in some way, if they did believe him and if they managed to prove Steve did all this shady shit, literally Michael and Trevor would, after this whole thing, still end up in prison, likely for the rest of their lives. Trevor would go to prison for simply being a wanted man, and Michael due to his illegal deal with Dave Norton. However, shit really hit the fan when Trevor found out the truth about Brad. He found out that the letters from quote-unquote Brad were actually written by the FIB, specifically Dave Norton, as a means to get Trevor to turn himself into the FIB. And also, Trevor, just like Michael, believed that if he did all of this work for them, Steve would make sure that Trevor was no longer a wanted man. Of course, as we know, that all went the complete opposite way, as Steve tried to have Trevor killed by Franklin towards the end of the game. But what about Michael? Michael was in a very similar situation to Trevor, but a little bit different at the same time. However, he was promised by Steve personally to have all of his files deleted. Now, that too was actually a setup, as like I said, in the wrap-up mission, Steve tried to have Michael arrested, and to me that just shows that he would have never ever even deleted the files that Michael asked him to delete in the first place. Also, Michael, just like the others, at this point had no choice, even more so than the other two. Just like with Trevor, he would just simply be put in prison if he refused to do what Steve said. There may have also been the factor of Michael doing this whole thing as a favor to Dave, and I'm not really sure about that one, so leave your thoughts on that in the comments below though. Unlike Trevor, Michael really couldn't use the FIB for much, and just like he himself acknowledged in the by the book mission, he was but a mere puppet to Steve Haines and his big plan. Later on, however, he did figure out a way to use them briefly, as during the bureau raid, he managed to delete all of the files that the FIB had on him and his entire crew. I do believe that's also the reason that they could not go after Steve Haines before the bureau raid, since if they did, there would be an investigation, and if the person who was responsible for the investigation would find the files, Michael, Trevor, and likely even Franklin would be quite fucked. However, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Until the next video stream, bye bye.